The invoice was only $199. For one of the most powerful CEOs in Texas, it was less than the cost of a dinner meeting. For a struggling single-father mechanic named Michael Carter, it was the difference between keeping the lights on and having his electricity cut off. What happened over the next 24 hours shocked an entire city and changed 2 lives forever. Before we begin, if you believe kindness matters, if you believe people deserve second chances, and if you enjoy emotional stories that restore faith in humanity, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories. The story took place in Dallas, Texas. Michael Carter had spent the last 6 years raising his 8-year-old daughter, Sophie, alone. Ever since his wife, Rebecca, lost her battle with cancer, Michael had carried the weight of 2 parents on his shoulders. Every morning before sunrise, he packed Sophie's lunch, braided her hair the best he could, dropped her off at school, and then spent long days working at his small auto repair shop. Business had never been easy, but lately it had become even harder. Rising costs, fewer customers, and mounting bills were slowly crushing him. Some weeks, he barely made enough to cover rent. Still, Michael never complained. The people who knew him admired him because he always found a way to help others. If an elderly customer couldn't afford a repair, Michael quietly reduced the bill. If someone was stranded, he stayed late to help. His daughter often asked why he helped people when they struggled to pay. Michael would smile and tell her that kindness always finds its way back. He believed those words. He just didn't know how much they would be tested. One rainy Thursday afternoon, a black luxury sedan rolled into his garage. The vehicle belonged to Olivia Bennett, the CEO of a rapidly growing technology company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Michael didn't recognize her. To him, she was simply another customer. After inspecting the vehicle, he discovered a minor issue involving a damaged sensor. The repair was straightforward, and he completed the work within 2 hours. The final bill came to $199. When Olivia arrived to pick up the car, she seemed irritated before she even entered the office. Her expensive clothes and confident posture made it clear she was used to getting her way. Michael calmly explained the repair and handed her the invoice. Olivia glanced at it briefly. Then she frowned. Instead of paying, she accused him of charging too much for a simple repair. Michael patiently explained the labor and parts involved, but she wasn't interested in listening. She insisted the charge was unfair. Several employees and customers watched in uncomfortable silence as the argument continued. Michael remained respectful despite the embarrassment. Olivia eventually grabbed her keys and left without paying a single dollar. The unpaid invoice sat on the counter. Just $199. For Olivia, it meant nothing. For Michael, it represented hours of work he desperately needed to support his daughter. That evening, Michael locked up the garage and drove home feeling defeated. As he entered the small apartment he shared with Sophie, he forced a smile. She excitedly showed him a school project she had worked on all day. Michael praised her artwork and helped with homework, hiding the stress that weighed heavily on his heart. Later that night, after Sophie fell asleep, he sat alone at the kitchen table staring at unpaid bills. The electric bill, the rent notice, the overdue medical payments from Sophie's recent hospital visit. Every piece of paper seemed to remind him how close he was to falling apart. He thought about the $199. He thought about how hard he had worked for it. Then he quietly folded the bills and prepared for another day. Across town, Olivia Bennett attended a formal charity event at one of Dallas's most prestigious hotels. The event honored community leaders and successful business owners. Among the guests was her father, Richard Bennett. Unlike his daughter, Richard had built his reputation on humility. Years earlier, he had started with nothing and transformed a tiny manufacturing company into a national success. Although he was now worth hundreds of millions of dollars, he never forgot where he came from. During the evening, Richard overheard Olivia casually telling a group of friends about her disagreement with a mechanic earlier that day. She laughed while describing how she refused to pay the invoice. Several people chuckled. Richard didn't. Instead, he became unusually quiet. He asked for details. As Olivia continued talking, her father listened carefully. The more he heard, the more disappointed he became. To Richard, the amount wasn't important. The principle was. He knew what it felt like to struggle. He knew what it meant to work with your hands and depend on every dollar. Most importantly, he understood something his daughter had forgotten. Respect isn't determined by wealth. The following morning, Richard drove to Michael's garage. Michael looked up from an engine repair and saw an older man stepping out of an elegant vehicle. Assuming he was another customer, Michael greeted him warmly. Richard introduced himself and asked if they could talk privately. For the next 30 minutes, Michael explained what had happened. He never insulted Olivia. He never exaggerated. He simply shared the facts. Richard listened carefully. As he looked around the garage, he noticed aging equipment, worn tools, and signs of a business fighting to survive. He also noticed photographs of Sophie covering one wall. Pictures from birthdays, school awards, family memories. Richard saw a father doing everything he could to provide for his child. By the end of their conversation, he felt a deep respect for Michael. Then Richard asked a question. What would help your business most right now? Michael hesitated. He wasn't looking for charity. Eventually, he admitted that updated equipment would allow him to serve more customers and hire additional workers. But the cost was far beyond anything he could afford. Richard nodded. A few moments later, he pulled out his phone and made several calls. Michael had no idea what was happening. Then Richard thanked him for his honesty and left. Michael assumed that was the end of it. He was wrong. Less than 3 hours later, several luxury vehicles arrived at the garage. Business consultants, attorneys, and financial advisors stepped out. Michael thought there had been some kind of mistake. There hadn't. Richard Bennett had spent the morning reviewing opportunities within the automotive service industry. What he discovered impressed him. Michael's garage occupied valuable property in a rapidly developing area. The business had a strong reputation and loyal customers. The only thing holding it back was lack of capital. Richard decided to invest. Not a small investment, a life-changing one. By the end of the day, contracts were prepared. Funding was secured. Expansion plans were developed. And Michael received news he could barely comprehend. Richard was investing $19 million into transforming the small garage into a regional automotive service network that would create jobs, provide training programs, and expand throughout Texas. Michael sat speechless. His hands trembled as tears filled his eyes. He wasn't thinking about the money. He was thinking about Sophie. He was thinking about all the nights he worried about bills, all the sacrifices, all the fear. For the first time in years, hope felt real. News of the investment spread quickly. When Olivia learned what had happened, she was stunned. The mechanic she dismissed over $199 had earned her father's trust, respect, and partnership. More importantly, she realized how badly she had judged him. A few days later, Olivia visited the garage again. This time, she arrived quietly. There were no arguments, no arrogance, only humility. She apologized sincerely for her behavior. Michael accepted without hesitation, because despite everything, he wasn't interested in revenge. He never had been. Months passed. The garage transformed dramatically. New equipment arrived. Additional locations opened. Dozens of employees found stable work. Families benefited from opportunities that didn't exist before. And through it all, Michael remained the same person he had always been. Kind, honest, grateful. One evening, after a long day, he stood outside the original garage with Sophie. The sun was setting across the Texas sky. She looked up at him and asked if kindness really does come back. Michael smiled. He remembered the unpaid invoice. He remembered the sleepless nights. He remembered the stranger who saw value in a hardworking father. Then he nodded. Sometimes it comes back in ways you never expect. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe for more emotional stories. Special request: comment below and tell us where you're watching from and whether you believe kindness always finds its way back. As the evening sky faded into darkness, Michael watched Sophie laugh and run across the parking lot. In that moment, he understood something priceless. Wealth can open doors, power can command attention, and success can impress the world. But character is what truly changes lives. A mechanic's honesty had earned something far greater than money. It had earned respect, trust, and a future he once thought impossible. And all because someone chose to see the value of man behind a simple $199 invoice.